Hello again, everybody. I'm the coach Shannon Griffith, and thank you for joining me here on Thursday evening with the Hoosier Football Tailgate here on the Believe Network. Thanks again for joining me tonight. I'd love for you to do the polite thing, as Kent Sterling would say, and hit the like and subscribe buttons because it's what we do in Hoosier land is we're very hospitable and very polite. But would help if you would do that for me this evening. Tonight got a good show for you. Going to have Matt Weaver on from Pigs.com. And we'll talk a little bit about the Ohio State game. We'll talk a little bit about the quarterback situation for the Hoosiers, and then as well as talk about the Indiana State Sycamores and Kurt Mallory coming to the stadium, Memorial Stadium, Friday night at 7 o'clock, a kickoff on BTN. So you'll be able to catch it there if you're not able to be in attendance. Or if you can be there and able to get to the game, I'm sure the Hoosiers will very much appreciate any support they can get from the fan base. One thing I wanted to do tonight is talk a little bit too on the QB1 situation, that the battle that is ensuing between Taven Jackson and Brendan Sorensby. I don't think they got another great read out of that on Saturday against the Ohio State Buckeyes, a game that the Hoosiers lost 23-3. Not much offense was occurring on Saturday, and really didn't get themselves a chance to really show what either one could do. Kind of the same scenario coming out of fall camp, where coaching staff felt that neither one kind of rose to that number one status. So they're going to do the same thing this week, play both of them. Now this week the difference will be that Taven Jackson will start at quarterback on Friday night, and you'll see him with that first drive for the Hoosiers, and then Sorsby will again work their way in. Now, if for some reason Jackson would have a great hot hand, I'm not sure they make the change. Maybe they let that quarterback take more snaps, but we'll see what that yields on Friday night. It's kind of odd in the sense that you've gone from one perennial power in the Big Ten to a 1AA program in Indiana State. So you would hope, offensively speaking, you would see some more opportunities arise for the quarterbacks to display what they can do with the offense against a team that is not as physically in stature as Ohio State. But we'll have to wait and see. I think, and I'll cover this a little bit later on, some of the things that Indiana needs to do on Friday night is really take control of the game from start to finish, and that starts with an offense that does puts themselves on being able to drive the football and do some of the things to put themselves in the best possible position to win the game, but also be able to come out of that game with a little confidence offensively heading into their next contest against Louisville. And then the final segment tonight, I will talk a little bit about what the Hoosiers need to do to get the win. What are the 5 areas the Hoosiers need to do on Friday night to guarantee themselves a victory as they look to go 1-1 on the year and get themselves back to the 500 level prior to their game with Louisville that's lingering in the background. And the one thing the Hoosiers can't do, they cannot peek forward in terms of what's next on the schedule, because if they're doing that, then they're in for a rude awakening on Friday night. Because I guarantee you, Kurt Mallory is going to be a team that will have a little chip on their shoulder, and they're looking for the opportunity to upset the Hoosiers. So stay tuned. Coming up next, Matt Weaver will join us, and we'll talk a little bit about everything, including Friday's game against Indiana State, as well as a little bit on the Ohio State game and the quarterback situation. So stay right tuned. We'll be right back with Matt Weaver. Hoosier Football Tailgate here on a Thursday evening. Joining us now is Matt Weaver from Peegs.com. And Matt, how you doing this evening? Doing well?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm hanging in there, my man. As we progress along to week 2 here with the Hoosiers playing Indiana State on Friday night, a Friday night game that's different. I'm not so sure that Tom Allen agrees with the Friday night games. What's your feeling on Friday night games?
Well, I kind of lean his way. I think Friday nights are for high school football. I know they do all these games during the week. Especially when you get later in the season, the action, which is actually some of my favorite things to watch, is those Tuesday and Wednesday games. But I'm with him. I think Friday nights are for football. I will say this selfishly as a dad. My son plays football on Saturday, so
Right.
there is a part of me that kind of likes it just because, like I said, selfishly for me, I can go see him play. Whereas a lot of times I miss his games because I'm obviously, at a stadium somewhere working.
Yeah, I know it can be a pro, it can be a con. I know that from a football standpoint, they won't be able to have any of their recruits on campus on Friday night, and that always is a concern as it pertains to that. I don't understand the reason behind all of this with the Big Ten. I know they've done it. This is their second year implementing the Friday night schedule. Do you know per se?
I'm not sure how long they've done it. I know Indiana's played on a Friday night before, but I think it's been a number of years. I mean, it's all TV driven. It's all about television, and maybe it's just one way to move one game. I mean, let's be honest. This is not a marquee matchup for the Big Ten this weekend. So
Right.
you move it to a Friday, and it allows you to maybe not have to try to juggle so many games on Saturday. I don't know if that's just me kind of spitballing and kind of speculating, but that's how I probably see it. I think this is a game where it's Indiana State. So move it to Friday, and then we have our primetime spots on Saturday for the bigger teams or bigger games.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, it's all relative to everyone's perspective, I guess. I think from an attendance standpoint, it'd be better on a Saturday than a Friday, but you know what? It's already been scheduled, so they're going to play it irregardless of what we may think or what anyone may think, and that's just the way it is. Let's before we jump to Indiana State, get your take a little bit on the Ohio State game. On what your thoughts were on that.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because obviously, my prediction before the game was 45-17 Ohio State. I thought Indiana's defense, especially up front, and this, as long as you've been in this state, the hardest position for schools like Indiana to recruit are O linemen and D linemen. There's just not a lot of those big guys that are athletic and can make plays. And if the ones that are out there go to the bigger schools, they did a great job in the portal recruiting some D linemen. Andre Carter, Philip Bleedy, Marcus Burris, Linnell Carr, who's kind of an edge guy, but still up there in the front. And those guys played well. I mean, the defense played well. Now, there were some kinks. I mean, Ohio State had 3 new linemen, a new quarterback. So there were some kinks, and they'll get better. But, the defense was legit. The offensive game plan to me was head-scratching, to be nice, and disappointing, to, be honest. It looked like a spring game offense to me. It looked like they ran about a half a dozen plays the entire game, and their whole goal was just basically not to get blown out. There was almost no shots taken downfield. It was like a Navy offense without being Navy.
Yeah.
The passing game was just non-existent. And so that was disappointing. I've told people I think this team has enough talent to get 6 wins, but the schedule's brutal. You're playing 9 conference games in the Big Ten. You're in the Big Ten East, and then Louisville's basically a 10th conference game.
Yeah.
It's a game that should have never been scheduled in the first place, but it's been scheduled. You got to play it and move on. But they've done a nice job in some areas, but this offense. I get it's Ohio State, but that was not good. It was brutal to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think Coach Allen alluded to some of it a little bit, was the fact that they started a numerous number of times inside their 20, a few times inside their 10-5, which really hampered the play calling or the play selection, which I get from a coaching standpoint when you're going into the game and you don't have a guy that's really stepped forward and really laid claim to that spot. You're pretty much at, what do you do? And you didn't, like you said, they didn't want to put them into bad positions, which caused them to hold back, not take some shots, do some things that they normally would have done if they had a more experienced quarterback. Who do you think ultimately, because now you're going from the opposite ends of the spectrum, you go from Ohio State, perennial top 10 team, defense that's probably within the top 10 nationally year in, year out, to now taking on a 1AA Indiana State defense. And you're probably going to, you would hope that your quarterbacks would both get opportunities to show what they can do. Who do you think ultimately is probably going to be the guy if you had to bet on it?
Well, I mean, and maybe it's because I lean Taven Jackson, but probably maybe it's for the wrong reasons. I'm not saying you pick a guy because he's the in-state guy, but I do think that plays a factor when he comes from a program like Center Grove. I think I'm not saying either guy spins it superbly, but I think he throws it a little bit better. And I think, they've got some weapons at receiver. I don't think there's any studs. There's no like Cody Latimers or somebody like that, but I think it's a deep group. And obviously you got Jalen Lucas, and not to dwell on the play calling, but I don't know why you run a guy like Jalen Lucas repeatedly up into the line instead of trying to get him on the perimeter. But I get it; it's Ohio State, OC. But I lean even a little bit, although Sorsby's probably a little bit better. They're not that much different, Sorsby probably runs a little bit better. I think Taven probably throws, but they can both run and throw. It's not like It's not like you're talking Connor Bazelak and Dexter Williams. Two totally different quarterbacks from last year. So I think they're pretty even. I lean Taven. I mean, not that either guy played great. We didn't get to see much fall camp. Well, we didn't get to see team stuff in fall camp. So I'm going by what I kind of heard. What I heard is from day to day, one guy would play good, the other one wouldn't, and then the next day would flip flop. Which I'm guessing as a coach is probably maddening because there's no consistency, right. And so you're kind of like, who do you go with? And I think this is one reason why they're at where they're at. They're taking this basically. It's like fall camp's extending 2 weeks into the season as far as the quarterback position goes. I would lean Taven, but I will not be shocked if Brendan Sorsby. I mean, I really think this is a dead heat. And, it'll be interesting to see Indiana State. I would, both guys you would think would have a chance to look pretty good. No disrespect to Indiana State, but obviously there's a talent disparity there, and you should handle your business. So it'll be interesting to see what they do because they kind of, implicate or indicated that they're going to try to pick a guy after this game going forward, starting with Louisville.
Yeah, and I think if you ask anyone on the street, I think you get a 50-50 response. Some would say Taven, some would say Brendan, but I don't know if they're going to get what they need from an Indiana State game and be able to come out and say, this is the guy. And that's the little concerning point from my perspective as a former coach. You've had you've had all spring and then also all fall camp. And neither one of them took the bull by the horns, so to speak, according to the coaching staff that said, hey, I'm the guy. And so you're going to probably go in the Louisville game again. I would hope not for their perspective, but we'll have to wait and see. But Indiana State this week, I just wanted to get your take on it because you've seen a lot of different teams over the years and different quarterbacks. And I think your perspective on it is good to have.
It doesn't make you feel better when you see your former quarterback dropping 400, 500 yards and five dimes out west. It looked like a first round draft pick and a Heisman Trophy guy.
Well, I agree with that. Thank you, the portal. The crazy thing of it is and I don't want to get sidetracked as much on this, but even when he was here, his biggest problem was injuries because he just wasn't a big, strong kid. But now when you see him out, Michael Penix Jr. out west in a Washington uniform, he looks thicker, he looks bigger and stronger, and it's quite a different Michael Penix from Indiana to Washington. But yes, you're right. He's having a pretty stellar year out there last year, and then of course got off to a great start here with you. Sum up your defensive thoughts on the Ohio State game.
Well, going in and when I would talk to coaches, they felt good about the D line. Like I said, linebackers, I think they felt like they had two or three guys, but you have to rotate guys, and obviously Aaron Casey is a good football player. I don't know if he's a
Absolutely.
next level. I don't know if he's a next level guy, but as far as college football, he's a really darn good football player.
Yep.
I thought Jacob Mangum Farrar played well, but like I said, developing depth there will be important. The key, the biggest question was the secondary. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen the top 5 corners for Indiana last year who were all gone. Like they had nobody at corner on this team that saw snaps for Indiana last year. Now they had some guys that obviously played, that came in from the portal. And the only guys who came back were freshmen that basically got a few snaps here and there on special teams, and they maintained their redshirt status. So that's what you did know. Safety was not as bad, but it was still pretty inexperienced. And I thought they did a good job. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. is just a ridiculous player, and
absolutely
they did a good job. They did a good job against him, and I think some of it. I talking to coaches, they were hoping that the guys up front, and this, if you can get Kevin Wilson always used to say, it's not how long that guy can cover the receiver, it's how long it takes my DN to get to that quarterback. That's what's going to determine if we can stop the passing game. And I thought they did a pretty good job up front, but I thought there was plays where it looked like maybe they were going to get beat, and they recovered and they knocked the ball away. Coach Allen said there were a couple picks in there that they should have had. He's a defensive guy, so he's going to grade them hard. But I thought, Kobe Minor, Nick Toomer, I thought all these guys, I thought they played pretty well. And it's really encouraging to see that, because that was the biggest question mark coming into this season was, could this secondary, and it was, the secondary last year was not good, and they had so many returning guys who had done good things. And for whatever reason, they had a bad year. So, you wondered, was it good that they lost everybody, or could it be good that, maybe it's good that you got new guys because it's fresh faces and maybe it was getting stale. So I thought Matt Guerrieri, the new play caller on defense, did a really nice job of mixing things up. And, talking to one of the Ohio State 247 guys, he mentioned that he was like, Indiana really did some things that I think it really bothered Ohio State. It really kind of confused them with some of the things they were doing. So I think he did a good job. If you can get back to close to what Kane Womack had 2 years or 3 years ago, the COVID season, where that defense was fantastic, that would be great. Get some turnovers, shorten the field, make it easier for your offense so they don't have to go 80 yards all the time. But I thought the defense played well, and to me, it was a very encouraging. I hate writing positive stories after losses because it's hard for me to do it, because I don't, moral victories to me, or, I just don't, I'm not into that. But I wrote, my story was about the defense and about how they played well, and they showed a lot of promise, that they held down a good offense. I mean, Ohio State probably hasn't scored that few points in years. I don't know. Maybe there was a game last year, but they really did a good job. And I think it's something they can build on.
Well, there's no question about that. In terms of that, what they got, I thought their defensive line played well. The Carter kid from the transfer from Western Michigan, I think, is going to be a beast for them as the year goes on, because I think he gives them a lot of strength and toughness up front that they haven't had in the last few years. So it'll be an interesting dynamic with that as the year goes on defensively. Now, the key to them is, can they come out against the Indiana State team where they really should dominate and hold their own and really put the clamps down and put themselves in a position? Because here's Indiana State coming in. They're 0-1. They get beat by Eastern Illinois 27-0. So Eastern Illinois, and not to take anything away from their victory, but they're not like the perennial power in that league, and they're in a rebuilding scenario. And so it'll be important for the IU defense now to really kind of force their will upon the Sycamores on Saturday. How about the last I guess scenario that's in this game on Saturday is the Kurt Mallory bringing a team into Memorial Stadium. Of course, his dad, Bill Mallory, was the head coach here for a number of years. I kind of get the sense it's a pretty emotional setup for this Friday.
Yeah, I would think so. And I mean, obviously, everybody knows what Bill Mallory meant to Indiana. I mean, when I was a kid and we had, grown up in Columbus, Indiana, and having season tickets to IU football, I mean, my first memories were actually when Lee Corso was there and then Sam Weiss. But my most fondest memories are obviously with Bill Mallory and what he did. I mean, they were so much fun to watch. He had some great teams, obviously, Anthony Thompson, Von Dunbar, some really good players. I've not met Coach Kurt Mallory. I met his Doug was obviously at Indiana under Kevin Wilson for a couple seasons, so I got to know him a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. But it's a football family. You're an
Yeah.
former in-state coach. I mean, that is a football family through and through. And I was a manager at IU, but I started after Coach Mallory was gone. But I talked to players, and the loyalty and the love that they had for him was just, it's hard to describe. It
Yeah.
really was. I mean, even the managers, there was guys who quit just because he was no longer the coach. I mean, they loved him that much. And I had players tell me, I remember sitting at the Bluebird talking to an offensive lineman, and he said, "You see that brick wall? If Coach Mallory asked me to run through that brick wall, I would try to do it." I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, so he was, you could see it. He was, he was obviously a great coach and a great man. And obviously it's a shame that, everybody's, I know he's getting older, but it was a shame how they lost him kind of in that tragic accident with him falling down the steps. So
Mm-hmm.
it's too bad he couldn't be around to see. And here's the other thing about Bill Maher. I think this says more than anything. Indiana fired him, and the way they did it was probably not the greatest, not the best. And he stayed in Bloomington. He come to practice. I remember one of the best days I ever had. I called my dad up after I left practice. He talked to me for 15 minutes. We just sat there and talked football for like 15 minutes. I mean, he did most of the talking because he knows a heck of a lot more than I do. But
Mm-hmm.
it was awesome. I mean, for me, it was like I called him as a dad. You can't believe this. Bill Mallory talked to me for 15 minutes on practice, standing on the sideline, and it was amazing. And so that's the stuff I think about when I think about him. But how he never stopped loving IU, even though for a while they stopped loving him.
Mm-hmm.
I think it shows a lot about what kind of person he is, that he still supported that school and wore IU stuff and was out there supporting them, even though, they let him go.
Yeah, and I worked with Kurt at Ball State when we first went there under another former IU coach, Bill Lynch. We were there for I don't want to say 8 seasons, won a championship together. So I got a ton of respect for Kurt. I'll guarantee you this: Indiana State will come with a chip on their shoulder, ready to play a game, irregardless of what happened week 1. Because you got to remember, these kids are the ones that Indiana passed on at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these kids are, and they're good football players, but Indiana, maybe passed on. And these kids that felt like maybe they should be playing up, now they're going to get a chance. What is your take on Indiana State? Have you gotten any, scouting reports or anything of that nature? And I'll kind of see what where I come
Well,
from.
I mean, I didn't get a chance to watch him. Obviously, I do a question exchange with the writer from the other team, and so I did it with a guy who covers him for the Tribune Star there in Terre Haute. They're having some injury issues. Their starting quarterback from last year, Cade Chambers, did not play week 1. Is not expected to play this week. They went with 2 quarterbacks. One guy threw it twice and got picked off both passes, but he sounded like he's a pretty good runner. Ran for like around 60 yards on 9 carries. In fact, I think he led him in rushing. Their other quarter, it sounds like they really struggled offensively, and they gave up. I think they had maybe 2 pick sixes in that game against Eastern Illinois. I could be wrong on that. I think there was at least 1 and maybe 2. So they really struggled to move the ball. Obviously, you don't score any points. They gave up 27, but some of that sounds like it was kind of on the offense. So, I think they got some guys on defense that could be a bit of a problem for Indiana if they're not ready to play. But I mean, this is a game where obviously they're going to come in with a huge chip. They got nothing to lose. They're expected to get blown out. Collect their paycheck and get blown out. They got nothing to lose. Indiana needs to come out and look like a Big Ten football team, in my opinion. That's that's what they need to do. And so, but both my parents went to Indiana State, so I have somewhat of a soft spot in my heart for the Fighting Trees, the Sycamores. I obviously I don't root for Indiana when I'm in the press box, but I'm an Indiana guy, that, and this is a game they need to win, so I expect them to come out and have a good performance. But it's a short week against a team that they probably are overlooking. You got Louisville next on the schedule. It's going to find out a lot. As a coach, where's your team mentally for this game?
Mm-hmm. Well, first and foremost, you can't let the Ohio State game beat you twice. What I mean by that you're resting on last week's game, that you completely forget about the opponent in front of you, because if you do that, you're going to get yourself get a rude awakening on Friday night. But you're right there. This is the type of game that Indiana has to take control early, start driving the nails in the coffin in the first half, so that in the second half they can start working on some of their depth and getting guys in and out. Indiana State, you're right. Gavin Screws and Evan Oles were the two quarterback. Evan is a transfer from Colorado State, I believe. He's the one that can run the football a little bit, so they'll do a little bit more of some of the read stuff, where Gavin, the kid that started, is a little bit better of a passer. He was 13 of 24 for 116 with 2 INTs on last week against Eastern Illinois. So you're going to have, an Indiana State team offensively, defensively ready to play. And you're right. Indiana has to be able to come in, take control, and put it away early. Matt, I appreciate you joining me. I know we got to talking here a little bit, but that's me a little bit in that regard. But I really appreciate you coming on. Try to get you again. Come on. We'll maybe throw a little recruiting into the fray, because I know that you're big on that as well for the Hoosiers. But thanks again for coming on tonight.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Matt Weaver, thanks for joining us here tonight on the Hoosier Football Tailgate, as Indiana gets ready to move on to Indiana State this Friday night, as Indiana will play their second game of the season. And all of a sudden, we got the Sycamores coming in for the Hoosiers. Welcome back to the Hoosier Football Tailgate here on the Believe Network. I want to thank Matt again for coming on this evening and giving his insights on the three areas that we discussed there about the quarterbacks, as well as Indiana State, most importantly, as the Hoosiers take on the Sycamores Friday night at 7 o'clock for a game that will be broadcast on BTN. And now I want to do a little bit of what I call the coach's room, the coach's film room. And I wanted to go back on a few things as it pertains to the Ohio State game on Saturday and show a few clips, kind of give you my perspective on it. And also maybe it jives a little bit with what Coach Allen was referring to, not only after the game, but in his Monday press conference at Memorial Stadium. This is the kickoff in the third quarter. And the reason why I'm bringing up this is the one where, not that they get a great return or anything. They had on some others in a punt game and stuff like that. But you can see now up at the top here, you got the yellow hankies thing out. And all of a sudden now, you're going to find yourself way back inside the 5, because this will be half the distance to the goal line. And what does that do to an offense? It immediately puts their heels almost on the goal line. You're almost, as a coordinator and a head coach, thinking worst things, the worst thing that could happen. Don't put yourself in a position to turn the ball over. No stupid calls in terms of asking the quarterback to throw it down the middle of the field, or some of those things that you would do if you had a little bit more breathing room. So you're automatically already starting with your back up against the wall. And too many times on Saturday, the Hoosiers faced that scenario where they were inside the 20 or inside the 10 and sometimes inside the 5 with starting their possessions. And that really hurts you offensively on what you're able to do, but it also hurts you in terms of getting points, because most of the time when you have to drive consistently 80, 90 yards for a touchdown, you're just not going to do it enough to have a ton of consistency. Here's a couple throws, mostly from Brendan. Jackson had a few, but not to the extent that Sorsby had. Here's one where one thing I wanted to point out is the offensive line. You can see what I call a bowl here forming. And in pass protection, that's what you want to see. You want to see what we call a bowl forming for the quarterback to be able to be in a position to throw the football. Here's a good throw. He doesn't throw the receiver into coverage. He puts it a little behind him, and it's a nice throw and catch and puts IU in a better situation to get a first down. Now, they didn't throw the football all that much on Saturday. And again, to their own faults, they said they may be overly conservative, but that was a good throw and catch there by Carter in that scenario. Here's a 3rd and 4 coming up. And this one here, there's another good pocket by the offensive line, but this one's going to be what I call a mesh route. And what I'm trying to show here is what these two receivers are doing. And this receiver here has to be in a situation where he's working himself up and he gets beyond the down and distance, as this gentleman here has to set the mesh a little bit deeper than he normally would to make sure he gets himself beyond the line of scrimmage or beyond that first down marker. But he catches it shallow, and he's not at the marker for the first down, and that's where the ball takes him on this one, his window for this throw. And they're short by a few yards, and instead of getting a first down, they end up being short in that situation. Here's another opportunity for them to throw it. Another good throw here. What you're going to see here is Williams does a good job of not what I call running himself covered. Again, good pocket. They keep the tight end in for some protection. And a good rip there by Brendan on that one. And this kind of gives you a better viewpoint of what I'm talking about. Williams doesn't keep on running where this guy can jump him. He puts his foot in the ground and comes back this way, and he's going to throw him open where he throws it right in here, and it's an easy catch for him, and they get a nice pitching catch, good route combination and throw. Here you get to see it from the end zone. Couple good defensive plays here. This one is done by Carter down here at the bottom. Watch him come off the ball here. He's got a lot of power, a lot of strength, and he is going to be a dandy for the Hoosiers. Him doing a great job reading it there. He's got explosiveness when he comes off the ball. You can see he's big and strong. He's physical. And I really think he's going to be a great addition to this Hoosier defense, especially as he grows into the defense and understands it better as the year goes on. Here's a good passing situation. It's 3rd and goal for Ohio State. They end up going to 5 wide because they put the back out. But really what's good, and the quarterback's looking here to this guy here, but you can see it's pretty good coverage. You get the double up here against Harrison, your number 1 receiver. That's good. You got him covered. Hoosiers do a great job of covering. He's spying the quarterback, really, because if he takes off and runs, he's got him. But they do a good job here, good pass breakup, and hold Ohio State to just a field goal. And so you can see from that perspective of what that brought to the table for the Hoosiers on Saturday. And it put them in a good position in some of their situations that they were able to solidify some things defensively within that game, get some stops. I thought they played well up front, their front 4 defensive linemen. Of course, we've talked about some of their linebackers in the play that they had on Saturday, and the secondary. The secondary, I thought, was really good, as Matt alluded to in our earlier conversation. Overall, a good, solid performance. I always say tamp it down a little bit. Ohio State, like I said, I'd rather play them the first week than any other week of the season because they will make their biggest progress from week 1 to week 2. And Kyle McCord or whoever they put at quarterback is only going to get better for that. Now, defensively, the Hoosiers have to continue on doing what they did on Saturday and be that physical and that commanding against Indiana State, imposing their will on the Sycamores throughout the game so that they can get a lot of 3 and outs and keep Indiana State off the board as much as possible in a game that the Hoosiers really should be the better team in that regard. One last thing here on the QB1 status. Saturday, I've already said that Jackson gets the start. Sorsby will be the one that will come in as the number 2 of rotation. I did hear, I think it was Taven that said it, that if a quarterback would have, one of them would get a hot hand, there's a possibility they could stick with that quarterback a little longer and not have a set number of plays or situations, but both of them are going to play. And while both of them should do quite well against Indiana State in the terms of ability when it comes to throwing it, because I do believe the Hoosiers will have a better opportunity. It's got to take one of them stepping to the forefront and saying, I'm the guy, I'm going to put this team on my shoulders and go make things happen and be the number 1 guy. But I caution that in the sense, and I'm sure Coach Bell and Coach Allen have alluded to this with both of them. Play within the framework of the offense. Don't go out and try to do something that's outside the framework, because that's when you get yourself in trouble. That's when turnovers happen. That's when you start making wrong decisions with the football, improper reads, and so forth and so on. So as long as they're within the framework of the offense, they should be, both of them should be okay moving forward with all this. But, I don't know necessarily if you're going to get a good look coming out of this week with both of them making a determination who the guy is moving forward. But we'll have to wait and see, and maybe it does come to fruition and one of them does step forward. Final thing I want to talk about tonight is kind of the 5 things that I think Indiana's got to do on Friday night to secure a win against Indiana State. And I think, number 1, offensively, Indiana has to develop a running game. They've got to identify what run play there is: inside zone, outside zone, option, power, counter. What play they can hang their hat on that they know that they can get consistently 4 and 5 yards. Because Saturday, their consistency on first down and second down when it came to that was not there. And that led to them not doing a lot of converting on third downs because they were in 3rd and long consistently all game. And that was directly related to their inefficiency on first and second down. So they've got to have a run game that identifies what play they can hang their hat on. That's number 1. I alluded to this earlier. Does one of the quarterbacks step to the forefront, put the team on their shoulders, and it says, I'm the guy? Who is that going to be? Is it going to be Sorsby? Is it going to be Jackson? Make the coaches make that decision, because either one of them has a great game. We'll find out if that occurs. I hope they both have a tremendous game on Friday night. The other one is this: can the defense, the third thing that they have to do, can the defense have another performance like they did on Saturday? Can they help the offense in the sense that they create 3s and outs, they create turnovers that leads to points? Can they, help the offense start putting the nail in the coffin of the Sycamores early in the game, perhaps through the early second quarter leading into halftime. So in the second half, Indiana can start looking and creating depth at positions, getting guys some reps that they may not have gotten against Ohio State. But they have to have a better performance Friday night on top of what they did on Saturday. And they should be able to do that against Indiana State. They have to create turnovers, and then the Hoosiers offense has to capitalize on that. And Indiana's got to get back to where they are leaders in the turnover margin category and create them, and the offense stays away from them and utilizes those turnovers and turn them into some type of points, be it a field goal or a touchdown. And lastly, special teams. The special teams for Indiana, irregardless of who they're playing, they have got to win the special teams battle. They have to stay away from penalties. They cannot have penalties. They've got to win the hidden yardage battle. What do I mean by that? Let's say they have a return that goes for 10 yards. That's one less first down that the offense has to get. Let's say they have a return that goes for 20 or 30 yards. That's 2 to 3 first downs less than the offense has to get. And when they're kicking the ball, they have good enough coverage that they're eliminating as many return yards as humanly possible so that they come ahead in that side of the game. And if Indiana can do that consistently and throughout the year, it's going to help them so much on either side of the football. And then, of course, if they can get a touchdown or get a block punt, whatever that may be, those sudden changes that help either side of the ball, then so be it. But special teams has to be something that the Hoosiers win and win consistently throughout the year. I want to thank you for joining me here on Thursday night on Hoosier Football Tailgate on the Believe Network. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Hoosier Tailgate 55. And also you can follow me on Twitter, Coach Griff 55 on Twitter as well. Thanks to Matt Weaver for coming on and joining us tonight and providing his insight and such. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube and share our video and let your buddies know and family friends know that the best source for IU football is right here on Hoosier Football Tailgate on the Believe Network. I will see you Monday for a recap of this Indiana State game from this Friday night, 7 o'clock. On the BTN network. If you can't be at the game, you can catch it there. But we'll catch you up on Monday evening with all the recap of this game here on Friday night, right here on Hoosier Tailgate. Thanks again to Matt Weaver. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. This has been the Hoosier Tailgate, Football Tailgate on the Believe Network. We'll catch you Monday. Have a great weekend.